Hello and welcome to another edition of the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. As you can see on screen right now, if you're joining us live on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, we are minus one gentleman in particular, but we are still left with an awesome duo of Drew Dinsick at the top right of your screen and Adam Chernoff the bottom left. Gentlemen, how are we going to cope without the professor? Drew, your thoughts first. It's going to be a tough one.
I guess I got to fight with Adam today. I don't know. No, in seriousness, happy for Brad to get a little time off. He earned a break with some of the bad beats he sustained last week.
I probably should have shared. I never actually asked him. If anyone hasn't seen Brad Allen's Twitter page from last week, scroll back, have a look at the Washington Redskins one. He was on them pretty hard, guys, pretty hard. He was on them at plus 6.5, plus 5.5, plus 5, plus 4.5. Every number coming in until Adam Chernoff. What happened was Drew Haskins fumbled on the halfway line. It was on the halfway line.
Yeah, and then it got ran back. No thought about going down either. Just took it right into the house.
Oh, absolutely nuts, guys. Yeah, let's have a look. What are we thinking? Week 15 takeaways. First of all, Drew Dinsick, a couple of bad beats there. I don't think you were involved in any.
My only. I had some beats. That's for sure. They weren't bad beats though. I didn't think.
They're all bad when you lose, but like that 49ers one especially as well was another tough one.
Oh man, that under.
Yeah, if you're back in the under, you were solid all game long.
2 touchdowns in 6 seconds.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it just goes to show you that, and you focus too much on that a lot of times because you got to consistently remind yourself the NFL is a small sample size. It's, there's the luck of fumble recovery and penalties and all of this plays into results. And, it's a good reminder after a week like last week to go back through and kind of do a careful evaluation. Was I on the right side? Was was this a result that was warranted or did I miss something key here? And I think, there's a lot of people who probably losses and we reflect on that and think, oh, what might've been. But overall, I think that the NFC playoff picture is shaping up to be crazy.
Unbelievable.
The fact that two of kind of the least impressive teams in the race, in the Seahawks and the Packers, are sitting at 1 and 2 right now is it's incredible. I mean, these I don't know what they did to earn a horseshoe for an entire season here, but it seems extremely lucky for the likes of the Packers and the Seahawks to be in the 1 and 2 spot, especially given the way that they've played against some of the contenders.
Yeah.
Like the Packers get embarrassed by the Niners. The Seahawks got undressed by the Saints with Teddy Bridgewater, and yet now here they still sit in the driver's seat for the buys. It's crazy.
Adam Chernoff, speaking of one of those kind of tough losses last week, the Titans-Texans total as well. I mean, what have we got? 3 interceptions inside the 5-yard line between both teams. That was a pretty tough one to take also.
Yeah, and 2 inside the end zone for Houston. That game could have pretty quietly been 38-21 drubbing for the Texans. But it was another week where we saw, off the top of my head, 3 different totals get bet up between 4 and 6 points, and none of them ended up coming through to decide which the movement went. So another interesting week from just a market dynamic standpoint, but managed to find my way into the greens. So it was
winning
week in that regard. Yeah. And finally, no split on insights. I thought for a second there, Houston might end up with a push on that last drive. I said, I've split almost every week. There's no way I'm going to split when I have 3 bets, go 1-1-1, but it worked out well.
Speaking of insights also, guys, if you are listening or watching us today, if you're missing out on Brad's picks, he will be on board on insights.matchbook.com later in the week. So the professor's plenty of time over in the Caribbean or wherever he is to be mulling on his picks, which we all need. Obviously, Drew, you made some good picks last week from Waikiki of all places, right? Let's move on to week 16, guys. Let's get it going. Let's have a look. The first game we're going to cover today, the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. Current betting, as you can see on screen right now, the Packers are 3.14 on the money line. The Minnesota Vikings 1.43. The main handicap here, Matchbook 5.5. Lots of money coming from Minnesota in the last 24 hours. 45.5 is the total. And Adam, we'll start with you here first. I mean, look, you're really hot on the Packers the start of the season. Look, they're 11-3. You'd have loved them to be 11-3, but are you at all worried? Because like Drew touched on it, they have this kind of fraudish element. Are they really that good?
Wow, Whale and I were texting, I think it was over the weekend, and we were going back and forth. I said, is Green Bay the most fraudulent or misleading 11-3 team or any team leading the conference this late in the season of any season you can remember? And we sort of came to the consensus agreement that this was an absolute yes. So, like, as you mentioned, I was big on them coming into the season. Their secondary is held up to an extent. They've done okay or within the expectations that I thought, but really we're seeing this offense regress back into having a lot of issues, but they just keep escaping games with victories and getting it done. And it's surprising to see, just given some of the overlying metrics for the season, whether it being a negative net yards per play or where they rank in some of the success rate metrics, that they're 11-3 and leading the conference with the potential to get a first round bye. It's pretty surprising. But this is going to be one of a few games we talk about where there was obviously an earlier matchup between the two teams playing within the division, but I'm not sure how much we can go back to week 3 and take away from that game. If we are, then I think everything points to Minnesota being the side. Despite losing that game 21-16, the Vikings plus 2.1 yards per play, plus 1.5 yards per pass, plus 2.9 yards per rush. Like, that was a dominating performance by the Minnesota Vikings in the first meeting between the two teams. I still think that there's a pretty enormous schematic advantage for the Vikings within this game. Green Bay struggles to defend play action. Cousins uses them 33% of his dropbacks. That's second highest in the NFL. Green Bay 30th in defending the rush from a success rate standpoint. Minnesota runs the ball the second highest rate in the NFL. Success has been conflicting with games, but you look at like teams like Philadelphia, Dallas, Carolina, San Francisco, all 4 of those run-oriented teams had their way with the Green Bay Packers for 4 quarters running the football on the ground. So Minnesota already did once this season. Not sure what's going to change this week, aside from the fact that potentially Cook and Madison are both going to be limited at best, probably going to be suiting up less than 100% if both of them suit up at all. So that's really the one kicker here. But from a number perspective, I think 4.5 was a pretty good number for this game at the open. Now up to 5.5 at some places, pushing there as well with sort of the irrelevance of 5. It's getting probably a bit steep, I would say, for the Vikings at 5.5. Ultimately, I think there's going to be some narrative play with Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football and how much he struggled, come back and sort of fuel a bit of Packers money coming back the other way. But a pretty good number set overall, I think, on this one.
Yeah, Joe, I think Adam touched on there, even just the general narratives. If we talked about this game a year or two ago, Cousins against Rodgers, there's only one side you want to be on a primetime game. But I think that narrative has kind of shifted in previous weeks with Kirk Cousins. What are you thinking here? There does seem to be a bit of a live move on the Vikings early in the week. Are you with it? Are you against it?
Well, I thought there was about a point of value on the Vikings on the open. My power numbers have the Vikings at a 5 and the Packers at a 2.5. So I give the Vikings a full 3 points home field advantage. I think they're built for the turf in terms of offense, especially. So I think 5.5 is the right number. It's interesting to see the spread drift and the money line has kind of stayed static, which tells you there's some support out there for Packers on the money line, I suppose. And so there's kind of this split. Some people think Vikings run away with this. Other people think Packers are alive. So that's an interesting kind of spread there. And then as far as kind of matchup schematics here goes, I think, all of Adam's points were relevant. I think that, overall, over the course of the season, the Packers offense has been wildly underwhelming. Aaron Rodgers' play has been supremely disappointing from the standpoint of he's getting an enormous amount of time in the pocket, and yet he still is having a very difficult time sustaining drives on a regular basis over the course of the full game. He can do it in spurts. He can do it, coming out of the gate, coming out of second half, but they can't really put together 4 full quarters of offense, which means this kind of sets up, at least from a side standpoint, I'm probably looking at this game much more for trying to capture some value if one or the other teams takes a sizable lead. I don't think that the Vikings, if they get out to, say a 2-score lead, is going to be able to prevent the Packers from coming back with scores, because the Vikings, at least in their secondary, outside of Harrison Smith, you can attack pretty much everyone that's on the field. And so really, like, if you're Aaron Rodgers and you want to attack in the medium deep range and Really all you need to know is account for wherever Harrison Smith is going, bait him to the left, throw it right, vice versa. And, you should be able to move the ball. You should be able to get yourself back in the game. As Adam brought up, I think the Vikings are going to have success on the ground against the Packers. That's kind of the key to unlocking their defense, which overall to me sets up for an overplay on this. I'm going to be on over 45.5. I think this does go score for score. I do not think either team is capable of generating a 2-score lead and sitting on the ball here, or preventing their opponent from coming back with some aggressive passing touchdown drives. So I think 46 points is a fair floor to expect in this matchup, and I think that the under is depressed in sort of this late season momentum to unders in these divisional games, which I don't entirely think is fair to just bomb the whole board unders, irrespective of matchup, because I think both offenses here have some pretty decent mismatches they can take advantage of. This thing probably finishes 27-24. I wouldn't be surprised if this is sort of a score for score kind of game.
Adam Chernoff, very quickly, are nodding your head there. A bit of a consensus amongst the both of you for the over?
Yeah, I would say that bombing these divisional totals would be an understatement. I mean, every single one this week, outside of the Giants and Redskins, which opened at like a 41, has been bet under. So I actually don't mind that overlook. I didn't really think about it all that way, just because it became sort of a stay away from the side perspective. But I don't mind that over the more that we sort of talk about it back and forth here.
Yeah, absolutely. Did open at 46.5, and like you said, Drew, obviously there's money coming for these divisional unders, but it's okay to oppose the narrative on a few of those at least. Right, let's move on to. This is so funny, guys. I mean, you have 2 7-7 teams here, the Cowboys and the Eagles we're discussing next. And it's probably going to be one of the most talked about games of week 16. Fox are covering it in the evening slot on Sunday. Betting here a matchbook. I know that Drew, definitely from listening to the Deep Dive podcast, you've got an opinion on this, and you went against Andy as well, which is great. Dallas Cowboys currently at 1.75 on the money line. The Eagles 2.32. 2.5, the Eagles are getting the start on here at 2.06. Good odds against shade there for the Eagles. 46.5 is the total. And Drew, look, I'll stay with you here for this one. It's the second time since 2012 that the Cowboys have been a favorite in Philly. They obviously put a big score on the Rams. That scoreline at the end didn't really justify, or they definitely flattered the Rams. The Eagles, though, are still getting it done just about. One wide receiver had a catch last week. We talked about him previous, Greg Ward. The running backs are getting lots. Adam, I know where you're going to go, Adam. But Drew, you're still a believer on the Eagles. You're still a believer.
Well, it's a price grab, really. And I feel silly in hindsight because I knew this coming into the home stretch of the season. We know there's really not any surprises about these teams anymore. And from week to week, if there's a massive market adjustment in terms of how a team is perceived, there's a great chance that it's an overreaction to something that just happened. And we saw the Rams look like world beaters against the Seahawks on Sunday Night Football. That number gets adjusted 4 points. And I kind of let it go thinking, the Cowboys, I'm not getting in bed with those guys like this. They're having, the season from hell at this point. So they're not worth backing. But truly that was a bad number last week. And there was lots of value to be had on the Cowboys. And it was mostly on the basis of, just the market overreacting to how amazing the Rams looked 2 weeks in a row, especially in primetime. I think the fact that you now have the Cowboys put on that kind of a performance that looked, absolutely unstoppable, especially with their running attack against the Rams, that people think, oh no, Cowboys are right at the ship. This is the team that we have kind of had an inflated price on all season. Like just looking at the kind of dynamics of the marketplace, their number went from like 5 down to 2, and it's back up to 5 effectively. And I think that's a bit of an overreaction for a team that still has a ton of problems on defense. You mentioned Greg Ward. I think I kind of like Greg Ward. I think he can run some decent routes. I don't know if he's going to be creating separation and getting open and being a huge part of this game. But the fact that you can't necessarily just single cover their wide receivers and focus on just stopping the run. So you can't sell out really on any aspect of the Philly offense right now. If you're at the Dallas defense, you have to play an honest full kind of complete.
They're being very creative with those two running backs as well, Drew, getting the middle flat. Yeah, they
absolutely.
are. Yeah.
And honestly, the play by Sanders in that game against the Redskins was really impressive. He really, it felt like he really elevated his performance. I really have kind of taken a liking to running backs with fresh legs late in the season here. I mean, as the running game becomes, more important to be, an aspect of your balanced offense, and late in the season here, you've noticed that some of these running backs who haven't really gotten the wear and tear of the first 8 weeks of the season are really shining. I think Sanders fits that mold pretty significantly, and I like his, just based on like what you remember seeing Dalvin Cook do to this Dallas defense. Some of the way that kind of the smaller, shifty, speedy guys are able to elude tackles against a pretty poor tackling unit overall. I think that the Eagles are going to be able to score here, and I haven't really brought this up because it's a little narrative-y, and I don't want to go too far in that direction, but a nighttime game in the link, as underdogs, like this kind of writes itself for, what the energy, what the atmosphere is going to be like. A lot of veterans on this team, a lot of guys who have won some pretty important games are going to be on the field. And I won't be surprised at all if you see a pretty full and complete effort out of these guys. I always think back to like the way they looked against the Packers on Thursday Night Football Week 4. Like, obviously their season was on the line. You had a number of veterans that played extremely hard. They were the tackling was like outrageously violent. The offensive line set the tone in that game, from wire to wire. And they came back from a 14-point deficit to get the win in that one. So this Eagles team, I don't think can be discounted, and I think you're getting a pretty decent price right now with them on the money line, or just taking the 2.5 points.
Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking on this one? Where do you stand with the Cowboys? I mean, what are you hearing about Dak Prescott? Because there are certain rumors out there that he might have a hand injury, a potential hairline fracture, but I don't think it's affecting the market in any way.
No, Jameis Winston has one of those too, and he keeps throwing for 450 yards a game. So apparently those don't matter anymore like they used to. Drew said the price is pretty good on the Eagles, and I think it's only going to get better in the next couple of days leading up to kickoff. We sort of saw it breach 3 in a few places anyway, but I think it's going to keep going up because the Cowboys' love is all of a sudden real, and all the issues that Jason Garrett had and they had with the play calling and the preparation and the game planning, that's sort of been pushed aside because we're like, okay, this offense is number one in a lot of key categories, top 5 in the rest of them. We can sort of just lean on that and forget that anything ever happened in the last 4 weeks that made us have serious questions about this team. So there was about a 2-point adjustment depending on where you look between what was expected to open and what came, and that was purely off of the reaction to what we saw against the Rams. Let's not forget that despite the Eagles obviously getting that late touchdown, they were doing a lot with very little in that game against Washington. So despite both of the teams having positive results and setting up this game, Dallas took the blunt of the adjustment. And I look at this, so Philadelphia is going to have to get creative with their tight ends and running backs. But how does that look against Dallas, who's probably going to be without Van Der Esch at linebacker, and then his backup, Thomas, was hurt as well. So all of a sudden in the middle of that Cowboys defense, there's a bit of a hole. And you can say what you want about Sean Lee. He hasn't been having a good season by any stretch. So now you get 2 of these linebackers potentially out. You have Sean Lee struggling for the duration of the season. All of a sudden, these tight ends and running backs might have a little success against the middle of this Cowboys defense. Still just 24th for the season, rushing and passing combined success rate is this Cowboys defense. So it's not like even when everyone's healthy, they've been playing up. And now it's a bit of an unusual matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. Could cause a little bit of issues. And just health-wise overall, Howard, Aguilar, Darby, Johnson, they're all expected to be back for this game. I do question how the Eagles are potentially handling this. They took a day off from all team activities yesterday, which was a bit unusual considering the circumstances. But I think that's sort of a play to health overall. It's going to come down to the Philadelphia's defensive line getting pressure on the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott in the backfield. Philadelphia 3rd in terms of adjusted line yards, 4th in terms of generating negative plays. They've been able to generate some pressure too. Cowboys' offensive line is a big step up, but if the Eagles can control it with their defensive line, I think they have a chance here. And I wouldn't discount the Eagles offensively here on what they can put up against this Cowboys defense.
Drew Dinsick, just very quickly, he's got a lot of heat in the last couple of weeks, Doug Peterson, but there has to be a coaching mismatch here as well. That's got to be a factor.
Yeah, and my underlying my underlying feeling is, even though there's distress, there's unrest, there's angst in Philadelphia about how the Eagles have underperformed this year, I still think there's a monumentally more pressure on the Cowboys in the spot. Pretty clearly, you can't, if you're Garrett, you can't have had your head in the sand and completely ignored and lost sight of the fact that your job is being bantied about for any potential comer. Urban Meyer this week, Lincoln Riley last week. Like, literally, like, if you're interested in the Cowboys job, you're going to get consideration via the media, and that can't be a great feeling if you're Jason Garrett and you're, because he's been in this lame duck status all season, and it's wild. And it's like, people are like, oh, he's going to get fired at the end of the year. Well, he didn't have a contract next year anyway, so it's like, they don't make the playoffs. Like, his term is over anyway on Black Monday. So I don't know. It's a very strange situation there. They've had bizarre palace intrigue all season between who's getting credit for what and who's getting used and who's not. And the fact that Zeke Elliott underperformed all season after Jerry gave him all that money, and now Dak needs to get contract, and Cooper's not going to get paid, and their primary quarterback Jones is not going to get paid. There's a lot of really strange politics going on in Dallas, and that's not really where you want to be heading into a game of this magnitude with your season on the line. I do think, if things start to go sideways, if they're in a hole, if they're down, if they're trying to, play comeback, and it's on Dak's, arm to make the passes to get them back in the game, and it's potential to unravel a bit with the way that they kind of have their constitution right now.
Financially speaking, 2.5 is obviously the main line here at Matchbook at the moment, 2.06. You can get down to +3 at 1.86. I think that's a bit much, Drew, isn't it, to get that half point odds? Obviously, 3 being an exceptionally key number, the biggest key number. But what way would you kind of look at it? How much would you give up for that +3?
I'm probably not interested in a +3 on this one. I'm playing the money line or nothing. I don't think that this is I don't think this is a game that devolves into field position, getting just enough yards to get your field goal kick made. And, speaking of, if it comes down to kickers, I'm not really worried about a tie game, end of the game, and Kai Forbath trotting out into that, that stadium, that setting, and nailing a 50-yarder, So it's I would lean special teams in the direction of Philly anyway. So I think if it's a close game, if it's a tight game, if it goes to overtime, I'm feeling pretty reasonable having a plus money price on Philly on the money line.
Yeah, tough times for Dallas kickers these last 2 years. We have a comment in from our own friend Brad Allen. Love the Christmas vibe,
but not doing the video.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's on the beach in Antigua. He's obviously got a bit of time to watch us, which is good. One or two other messages here saying Merry Christmas, Sully, Will, and Adam. He didn't actually mention Brad there because Brad's not here, so he doesn't get a Merry Christmas. Fair enough. And one other comment here at the moment, away, like both teams suck. I think that's a very fair assumption. I don't think any of us are arguing with that way. They do suck, but they're just in a really, really bad division that one of them is going to the playoffs. Right, guys, let's move on to the last game we're covering on Sunday. Obviously, if you're listening to this on the podcast at the moment, skip forward if you're looking for Saturday's games. We do cover the 3 Saturday games here, but we're sticking on Sunday for one more game. Let's have a look at the betting in the Saints and the Titans. Current betting here at Matchbook. You can back the New Orleans Saints. Fresh from a big win on Monday night at 1.73. Titans at 2.31. Main handicap here at Matchbook is 2.5. Titans getting a start at 2.01. 50.5 is the total. Adam Chernoff, obviously we all saw the Saints on Monday night. It was another one of these Drew Brees record games all over the Colts. Titans had a bit of a letdown last week. Is there potential that the Saints might just have a bit of a letdown coming to Nashville early game Sunday?
It wasn't a letdown. That is who the Titans are. That's the team Come
Good
on,
man.
that's who the Titans are.
They are who we thought they were.
Yeah,
it was coming.
Yeah. It was coming, and that's what it was. And it could have been a heck of a lot worse on the scoreboard. I think that they're going to get a bit of a pass for that one too, because it finished 24-21. But the first interception on Deshaun Watson, you can put that on him. That was a really good play by the Tennessee corner. But that second one was bizarre, where he just kind of dumped it over the line. And I don't know what happened there. But that could have easily been 38-21, potentially. Where it was very 8.4 yards per pass for Houston. It sums up the Titans secondary. When they have to step up in class, they just don't have the pieces to do it. In terms of the Saints here in this spot, so obviously a huge adjustment with this number based on where we sort of expected it to happen because of what occurred on Monday Night Football. So it's another game where there's a big reaction. I've been a bit critical of Drew Brees and his arm strength, and I think that you just have to go to the Saints Twitter page and watch his best throws of the week video that they post every week, and it's consistently a pass of less than 10 yards that somehow ends up working for him. But look, it's not like it's a detriment for the team overall because they're so good scheming around it that they're able to make it work. But where this gets interesting, so I went back and did some digging. Brees has faced secondaries that rank 29th, 26th, 20th, 26th, 20th, and then second against San Francisco, where they just put everything out there and he had an enormous game. But it's not like he's facing difficult competition in terms of opposing secondaries that are able to put together just a more than basic game plan to match up against the Saints scheme and really limit it overall. Tennessee is not going to do that. We know that. We've been talking about that for the last couple of weeks. It's going to be a same situation where, much like what the Houston Texans did, the Saints are going to have no issues throwing the football against this Titans secondary and moving it. Where there's probably going to be a concern that gets disguised as a bit of a letdown is this is likely the first week where the injuries that have been slowly compiling for the Saints on the defensive side of the football are going to show through. They lost Rankins and Davenport after the San Francisco game on the defensive line. The Colts didn't threaten that at all in terms of running the football against them. Tennessee can obviously do that. Kiko Alonso, still banged up at linebacker, unlikely to play in this game. That's not going to help when you're matching up against Derrick Henry. And then there's 3 defensive backs for the Saints who are unlikely to be anywhere close to 100%, even if they end up playing. How does that look against Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, who's been top 3 in every passing statistic that matters? So this is a spot where it might be sort of disguised as that letdown spot for the Saints. The market is certainly adjusted for it, but it's just a good spot where the Titans offense can take advantage of these Saints defensive injuries, which have been compiling for the last couple of weeks. But as I mentioned, they just haven't faced anyone that can open it up. San Francisco did. But that was pre-injury. So now we're seeing the first week where these injuries are really going to matter. Depending on the health of Derrick Henry, he's going to end up playing, how effective he is. We saw his hamstring getting taped up, getting some heat during that game against Houston. With another week, maybe he's a little more healthy. Tennessee can certainly have success moving the ball. I think the Saints can too. As much as I want to look to the over, though, we are seeing a pretty big number overall with this above 50. So not sure I'm jumping to that conclusion yet, but this is probably a spot where the Titans offense looks a lot better than what they did against Houston.
Drew, what are you thinking on this one?
No, I think that was a super complete handicap by Adam. This is lined as a, 27-24?
Yeah.
Saints? Yeah. That's pretty fair. that's a pretty good line.
Absolutely spot on. So okay, that's fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty good line. I guess I think that I agree with Adam's sentiment. Although the one thing I will add was a lot of the Saints injuries defense. I was expecting that to give some space for the Colts to get to 14 points. Yes, on Monday. The fact that they got a garbage time 7 and that was all they could muster was pretty disappointing. I thought that some of the replacement level players who came in for some of the starters, they may not be as talented, but they were fresh. They had their legs under them. They were playing hard. I think the energy and the atmosphere of a record-breaking night for Drew Brees in the Superdome, and just sort of the spirit that he got them fired up with, kind of carried them maybe for the night, and they played a little above their ability. I'm speculating here, but I do not think I guess I would go back to the well with anything that I think that the Titans can score in this one. Perhaps if if this number drifts up to 3, if the total comes down a tick more, if you can get the Titans team total at about 23.5 instead of 24, now I'm probably interested, because I think there's a chance that this is sort of a score for score kind of a game. And I don't think that there's any game script that plays out like what we saw on Monday night, where the Saints go out and light the world on fire, and from the scoring perspective, and play keep away and keep the Titans well under control from the scoring standpoint. But there's a chance that the Titans, perform well, and that, the Saints, as just overall, that, some of the schemes and some of the tricks that they're doing to move their offense don't quite work as well as what we've seen against some of the absolute bottom feeder defenses that they've faced over the last handful of weeks. So I could see a Titans victory here. But if I'm going to attack this, I'm going to wait and see what this line does. And I'm probably going to come in with the Titans team total over 23.5 if I can find it.
Okay, for Wednesday, guys, I think it's a stay away right now. Am I getting that sense? Yeah, that's okay.
Yep.
That's okay. A lot can change in the space of 4 days. Just one quick follow-up comment there for you, Adam, from Shane, getting in touch with us via YouTube. Adam will be pleased to hear that I've withdrawn my funds from rival exchanges and shifted over to Matchbook. Shane, good man. If you're betting the NFL on another exchange, you're doing something wrong. Matchbook, NFL, #1, best value. You can see it on the screen, guys. Tightest of margins, highest liquidity. Come get some. Right, let's move on to Saturday night. Right, 3 games on Saturday night, guys. How cool is this? It's amazing. Cool. This is very cool. Very cool. Just to get us more and more football. No college, obviously, this Saturday. Bar. What crappy bowl games on this week, guys? Some, I don't know, the Potato Bowl or something. Who cares?
Stay away.
Stay away. Exactly. Yeah. Wait until the 28th, 29th. Okay. First up, we're looking at.
I think the Brad Allen Antigua Bowl is.
There you go. That's why he's there. I was wondering. Yeah. I was wondering why he was there. Okay. Let's have a look at the betting. We'll do a Saturday night's game first in San Francisco. The Rams at 3.36 on the money line. It's been a long time, guys, since the Rams have been 3.36 against anyone. 49ers at 1.41. Main handicap at Matchbook is 6.5. 1.95. You can back the Rams there. 46 is the total. Jordan, right, let's start with the Rams. I mean, massive letdown in Dallas. There was a lot of warm money on the Rams throughout all of last week to move them off as a 3-point favorite.
Yeah.
Where do we go with this team? On the other side of the coin, San Francisco laid a massive egg at home to Atlanta.
They did. Should have seen that one coming. I don't know if Adam had Falcons or not, but I had heard someone late in the week make a pretty strong case for the Falcons, and I was like, yeah, you know what? That's definitely in play. Really, the Niners, especially spending 2 weeks on the road, performing as well as they did against the Saints, you wouldn't have expected them to, have the same level against, and also ran in the Falcons. So that was a reasonable letdown spot. Now the market seems to have adjusted the Rams down pretty violently, just in terms of the sentiment. And, some of that is a correction to they overreacted against the, after seeing them against the Seahawks. And I thought to myself, wow, man, if this gets to 7, I'm really, really going to have to think pretty hard about the Rams. I don't think we're going to get there. I think this is staying put at 6.5. Which I think then just opens up. Okay, well, can you swallow? Can you stomach a 6.5? Is there, is there a possibility that that Goff, succumbs to the pressure again? That's all of the defensive injuries that the Niners have suffered. They still have a pretty lively pass rush. And that is kind of the secret weapon. That's Adam's recipe for fading Goff is,
it's coming.
It's coming. And so I think, I think there's line value on the Rams. It's probably about a point and a half too high. But I don't know that I can get involved on the Rams. I have to do a little more soul searching before landing on a spot here. I think that, the Rams are not as bad as we saw, earlier this season against the Niners, and they're not as bad as we saw against the Cowboys last week. But they, this may not be the perfect matchup for them, and this could get ugly.
Adam Chernoff, Jared Goff checklist. Hit us with it.
Yeah, if you listen to the podcast, you know it already. Is he on the road? Is he under pressure? Is he laying points this week? 2 to 3 obviously apply in a pretty significant regard. But there is a bit of a bonus fourth checkpoint for this game as well. I've mentioned it a few times, and that really comes with the top 10 secondary as an opponent. This year, Jared Goff has faced 5 top 10 secondaries. Rams have averaged 14.5 points offensively in those games. And if we think back to the first meeting against this 49ers defense in LA, I believe Jared Goff had a QBR of 1. Which you can't. I don't think you can get worse than that. I believe it was 1. I think his yards per pass was something like 1.7. Like, it was as bad of a performance as you will ever see by a quarterback in the NFL. I'm not sure what prevents that from happening again, aside from the fact that was a historically poor performance.
What were the Rams getting that time, the points purpose? I know Brad was big on them that day. Was it 3.5?
It was 3.5. And I remember we were split on that one as well. But again, so we want to talk about now that number, obviously a big shift in this regard, but just look at the Rams the last couple of games. So they were 2.5 point favorites on the road at Arizona. And that was a game where everybody was trying to grab Arizona in terms of like the professional side, right? And then we saw a 4-point movement the next week against Seattle in favor of the Rams. So that completely flipped, and there was that overreaction. And we saw a 4-point movement again last week against the Cowboys, to the point where if we're going to play that game, you're rating the Cowboys 1 point worse than the Arizona Cardinals, which is what the market was at last week. And somehow really, I think a lot of us looked over that. So now we're going back where the Rams are now a touchdown favorite. As Drew mentioned, that's a pretty lofty price, to say the least. But the 49ers do get Sherman back. LA is going to have to find a way to protect Jared Goff in this game. I don't know how they do it. This 7 could look extremely short if the pressure gets through the offensive line, as it has against Jared Goff when he's faced these lines in the past. So could look pretty short come Saturday evening.
Yeah, total is actually ticking up right now, guys. 45.5 a match. We can see in the banner on screen is 45. Guys, what are we thinking here, Adam? I think it's a tough one, Drew. What are you thinking?
I guess if the total goes back up to 46, if the total goes back up, I'm probably looking for an under here. I don't know that the Rams are going to light the scoreboard on fire in this game for sure. I guess, Adam, your point was pretty solid, and I wanted to add one more thought on this. If the Rams can find a way to protect Goff, I think we saw some pretty substantial adjustments to their overall scheme since the last time they played the Niners. I think they've, McVay, kind of one of the key criticisms you can kind of lob towards him over this 2019 campaign is he's done a poor job adjusting. And it's taken him a long time to kind of figure out, hey, you know what? We need to give this guy some more time. Let's put 2 tight ends on the field. And now with 2 tight ends on the field, I'm going to figure out a way to scheme those guys. Oh, actually, this is a great way to attack all of these defenses who are poor at defending the tight end. And, while on one hand you might say, okay, well, that maybe helps keep Goff on his feet in this game. I think that in general, the Niners defend tight ends fairly well. I know that against the Saints, they got exposed pretty badly early in that game. Couple of key touchdowns to Cook. I'm going to go back and see if I think that they were picking on a specific player who was on the field, and I need to just confirm who that was and whether he'll be on the field likely for the Niners this week before kind of making. That's a good point. But as I look at the numbers, I'm leaning under. I'm taking the points with the Rams, or I'm staying away from the game probably.
Okay, some leans there. Don't know if we're going to lock in. Let's maybe come back to that one. Adam, I'm going to leave with you with this one. I'm going to start off with a question here instead of looking at the prices, first of all. Tom Beery's been in touch on YouTube. I'm on the Ravens and Saints outright at decent odds with a smaller bet on the Chiefs. But will the pesky Pats do me in like they always do? Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking with the Pats? And I'll bring the betting up on the screen right now. What are you thinking? They're giving Buffalo 6.5. But overall with the Pats, there's a lot to be worried about going up against the Ravens and the Chiefs in the AFC.
I don't know. I think it's a worse matchup for them against Kansas City than it is against the Ravens. And I think that they're going to struggle with both of those teams. It's really, if they can lock up the 2 seed, it maybe looks a little bit different, but no matter what, they're likely going to have to go through Baltimore. I think that's just a rough matchup for this team overall schematically. But I honestly, if they lock up that 2 seed and Kansas City has to go into Foxborough, as daunting as it is to win twice in Foxborough in a short period of time, I think the Chiefs can do that pretty comfortably too. So if Tom is sitting on a Chiefs ticket, I think he's in pretty good shape. I think he also said there, I lost the comment, but he said that he had the Ravens as well. So I would not feel bad about holding Ravens and Chiefs tickets in the way that this AFC picture is shaping up.
I think he's in a really, really good spot.
Yeah.
Really good spot. 6.5 at the moment in Matchbook. The Patriots are favourite in the middle game on Saturday. That kicks off at about 9:30. You can back the Bills here, 3.48. 38 is the total. Adam, any kind of lean on this one? This is a very tricky one. This line seems absolutely dead on to me.
Yeah, not really a lean. I think if I really had to go one way or the other, I might look Buffalo or the over, but I'm not jumping to those conclusions yet. But there's something sort of interesting from this handicap. We have to sort of think of it from a couple different angles. So on paper, I think it looks a lot like a repeat of Pittsburgh Buffalo, and a lot of people are going to see that this way. And I think there's already been some attention given to the under because of that, as well as the Edelman question marks. But New England defense, number 1 in defensive EPA, number 1 in success rate, number 1 in dropback EPA, number 1 in success rate. It's great across the board. Same thing for Buffalo too, right? Number 4 in defensive EPA, 7 in overall success rate, 3rd against the pass. Like, these are fantastic defenses. And offensively, New England 27th in passing success rate, Buffalo 21st. We saw a complete lack of trust in letting Allen throw the football a number of times against that Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. It was a really well-coached game by McDermott. Allen made the plays when he had to, finding Croft in the end zone, but like that was a very conservative game plan not to let Allen throw that game away. That became pretty clear. The advantage for both of these teams in this game, running the football, that's where both of these defenses are weakest. But where this gets a little bit interesting is when we look at just overall pace and volume. The Buffalo and Pittsburgh game played to an extremely slow pace. We got an extremely low volume of plays. That was sort of expected based on how these two teams matched up. Buffalo never really pushed their tempo side of it to take advantage of that Pittsburgh pass rush, but they contained it well for the majority of the game. But you look at both of these two teams in neutral game state pace. So we're talking about any game within a touchdown. Both of these teams are top 8 quickest snap to snap for the course of the season in the neutral game state. Buffalo's got extremely quicker since week 10 when they made some adjustments to how they're getting the plays in and out of the huddle. So where this differs a little bit is this is going to be a lot quicker in terms of how this game plays out. So if you're handicapping, you really have to think about that. And how much does that pace change if Edelman's less than 100% or potentially doesn't suit up for this game? That's going to bring the total down quite a bit. But I think just over the course of the week, based on what these two teams played to last time, I think that's going to go overlooked because there was 303 combined passing yards for both of the teams. But Buffalo put up 375 yards of offense in that first meeting. They outgained the Patriots by 1.1 yards per play and about 150 total yards overall. So Buffalo found success moving the football. If there's a lot of pace that gets injected into this game, this total is going to come down. But how does that look over the volume of plays for the course of the game, where there's going to be potentials for both of these teams to have just enough attempts that they're going to probably find success moving the football? So interesting dynamic shaping up in the market, but nothing for me on this one yet.
Jordan, anything for you on this?
I think Adam's onto something there. I think the pace is going to be a factor, and I think you can even inject a little bit of potential for defensive and special team scores. I think both defenses are allowed to come up with points or at least create short fields. So yeah, I think I do think this is going to be I'm not in any way, shape, or form looking under here. I'm only looking over, and I'm only looking at taking the points. I don't think you can get the points in the Patriots in this game, even though, I don't think you can look at what they did in Cincinnati and in any way, shape, or form take anything positive away from that. That was a pretty lackluster performance by them, even winning by 21. And the Edelman injury stuff is spooky, not just for this game, but for any hope that the Patriots have of making another Super Bowl run without Edelman. Forget about it. Brady did show some positive signs of connecting with N'Keal Harry. If that continues to mature down the stretch here, then then you're feeling maybe a little bit less solid about having Ravens and Chiefs only. But the running game is still stuck in mud. The most effective weapon in the passing game for the Patriots is James White and his kind of ability to escape tackles and his slipperiness, so to speak. So I don't know how well you can rely on that if you're going up against pretty offenses.
Yeah,
like Houston.
Teams are going to key in on that, Drew, because they're not afraid of the tread over the top. They're not afraid. There's no Gronk there. There's no Edelman there. Potentially no Edelman there. So they're just going to go single man outside, and if they want to start doubling and putting cornerbacks on James White, that might be an option. Just interesting on that total. So we have it up on the screen there, 37.5. It opened at 38.5. It's actually 38 just at the time of recording here at Matchbook. So it seems to be a small bit of a move there. But we tacked that total last week in the Bills and Steelers. Now, the other side of the ball, fairness, we had the Bills as well. But the Bills did their job. Duck Hodges didn't do his job. But even Tom Brady, 42-year-old Tom Brady, is going to be better than Duck Hodges. Let's put our hands up here and say that with no weapons. So it's a very gettable total. Even at 37.5, you can back that at 1.86 a Matchbook. Drew, that's not a bad one.
It's not at all. And I think I think the Bills defense, while they have performed well the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I thought they were assisted a lot by the wind. Last week, obviously, Duck Hodges was not up for the moment. They really have they still do have soft spots. There are ways to attack this team. And I would expect that an offensive coordinator like McDaniels is going to know where to hit him. And I agree 100% that if they go with an up-tempo attack at any point in the game, they're going to move the ball pretty effectively. It's just a matter of if they can convert field goals, if they can convert red zone opportunities to touchdowns, then that gets you the over. But I'm feeling more bullish on this over than I was when we started the breakdown here. I guess. Just going back to our friend who commented about having Ravens and Chiefs tickets and the Patriots gonna surprise you. I don't think the Patriots are in any way, shape, or form value right now to win the AFC or the Super Bowl. But you're gonna see very little influential support for them in the playoff games that they have. Is my guess. And I wouldn't shy away entirely from taking positions on them in those games as a means of just sort of covering your liability on your outright tickets.
Bit of a hedge, because look, if they're playing Baltimore, even the AFC game in Baltimore, they're going. What are they going to be getting? 5-6.
Yeah, we talked. That was exactly where I was kind of going with that. You're going to get under a field goal against the Chiefs at home. Yeah. You're going to get close to a touchdown on the road against the Ravens in those two spots. So, this is real intangibly narrative-y space, so it's not. Don't think this is actionable information, but pretty clearly the quarterbacks involved in the AFC title race right now are wildly inexperienced in the playoffs and Tom Brady, right? Like there's an enormous gulf between having been in those moments and having performed to your expectation. Which takes reps and it takes confidence and it takes, a lot of experience, which Brady has, and virtually no one else does. The most experienced quarterback beyond Tom Brady in the AFC title race is Pat Mahomes, who's had 2 playoff starts.
Yep.
So that's kind of living in the back of my mind, even as bad as the Patriots offense has looked, and that you can't necessarily expect them to win you a game in the playoffs. They still have an amazing pass defense, and they're going to be going up against quarterbacks who may not give you their best in the playoffs because the nerves are going to be high. And there's a lot of evidence and support for that there's not necessarily any clutchness, so to speak, of a guy performing above his level just because he's good in the moment. But almost certainly there is a choke factor to be prepared for young quarterbacks when the moment, when the lights are the brightest, when the moments are that big. It's just, there's a reason that people consistently go to the window and bet against rookie quarterbacks making their first playoff start. Like those guys underperform year in, year out. We saw Lamar Jackson last year. Lamar Jackson clearly, the best quarterback.
He got booed off the field by the same people that are crowning him now.
Yes.
That was 11 months ago.
Amazing. At first half of the AFC title game, Pat Mahomes looked like he had never taken a football snap in a professional football game before. MVP Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
These kind of things, they happen year in, year out, and I don't think you can totally dismiss it, even though there's an enormous amount of kind of momentum, and people are enamored with these young quarterbacks in the AFC who are just fun to watch, fun to cheer for. Putting up spectacular performances. Like a lot of that changes come playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. A whole different arena in the playoffs in comparison to the regular season. Right, let's move on to the first game on Sunday, but will be the last main game we're covering here on Matchbook. The Houston Texans. Interesting one, guys. Opened pick. The look ahead was pick. I think it opened Houston -1 late Sunday night. 1.63 currently in Matchbook on the money line. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2.5. Main handicap line. The Bucs are getting a 3-point start. 2.02. 49.5 is the total. Speaking of totals, Adam Chernoff, I think you played a much bigger number early in the week. It wasn't there for long, but I think it was 52.5, 53. That just sounded like they just got it wrong. It can happen every now and again. Some of the sharpest minds in the world, some of the sharpest models, but sometimes they just get it wrong. But what are you thinking here at the moment, total-wise and side-wise?
Yeah, so I got the under early in the week. I don't think that there's the same value whatsoever at 49.5. But and it's a bit of playing with fire to an extent, just knowing that, Jameis Winston back-to-back games, 450 yards. That's not necessarily a reflection of how talented he is. It's just a reflection of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sending it all out, and they're throwing the football at an extremely high rate. The aggression is off the charts. They're going for it all under Bruce Arians to finish the season with some positive takeaways to roll into next year. They're just putting it all out there. And I think it's a reflection now that wide receivers 1, 2, and 3 on the depth chart are all out with hamstring injuries because they're running routes that are significantly deeper than any other team at a significantly higher rate than any other team in the NFL. So this is sort of the residual effect of playing this style of offense, is you're going to burn out a lot of your receivers. But just putting these injuries into context, Jameis Winston has 4,500 passing yards this season. Without Evans, Goodwin, and now Scotty Miller, it's 60% of the yards that Winston has gained throwing the football are not going to be on the field this game against the Houston Texans. So Brashad Perriman moves into wide receiver number 1, but he's dealing with a hamstring injury as well. He's going to end up playing for this game. He'll be healthy, but he was hampered by it throughout the early parts of the season. And so, how reliable does he come as a number 1 option? Bruce Arians in the press conferences said there's going to be a more concerted effort to get the passes going to running backs out of the backfield. I don't know who they have in the backfield that can catch the ball. Maybe Dare. He showed some strength in preseason, but you're going to ask a wide receiver to run a 20-yard go route down the field. Like, I don't know what they're going to all of a sudden scheme into here. Jameis still dealing with a bit of a hand injury. He's got a knee injury. I don't know. It's just this defense for the Buccaneers, we've given it credit for the number 1 mark against the run. That's sort of regressed back a little bit. But since week 10, when they dished Hargraves, their defensive back, Buccaneers have gone up to number 1 in pass success rate defense since week 10. The communication is apparently much improved. This unit playing much better overall. So this becomes a much more difficult matchup for Houston going on the road than what they faced last week against the Tennessee Titans secondary. Buccaneers defense, the secondary is playing very well. That's why we keep seeing these games get bet under. There's the risk, obviously, with Tampa Bay lighting it up, but I'll go under here pretty happily. Won't do it at 49, but maybe this total comes back. Otherwise, just stay away.
I want to ask a hypothetical question here, Drew. Right?
Sure.
So, if the Bucs have Mike Evans, Godwin, Fifth, okay, the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, if they had a slightly better record, how dangerous would they be in the 5 or 6 spot right now? Because I don't know if there's many teams that would really want to see this offense come in when they are clicking. And yes, we'll get famous Jameis and his whole lot of interceptions, but how dangerous would they potentially be in a 5 or 6 spot in the playoffs?
Yeah, it's a great hypothetical. They really
good coaches too.
Yeah, they really let this. The they're most likely going to bring Jameis back.
I think they have to, don't they?
I think they have to.
Yeah.
And I don't think you were doing it with your eyes closed that you're magically going to change him and make him a less turnover-prone quarterback. I think he is what he is. And I think you can expect, as long as you have, some of the more dynamic weapons in the passing game on the field, and especially if you have two of them, if you have two guys, that's a lot for pretty much any defense to be able to keep under wraps. And so if you can keep that kind of trio together, that nucleus together for a handful of years, you're going to have, you're going to be live. For sure, especially as with some of the other teams in your division waning. I think the Bucs will be live for years to come. But I don't think you could have expected them to necessarily make noise and win the NFC this year. I don't think their defense is anywhere close to the caliber that you would need to come away with the key stop. And their running game is a liability when it gets to when you're playing equal strength opponent. We kind of, it's the narratives are, defense matters and play. Well, your running game starts to matter when the weather gets. Well, it's much more when you're up against relatively equal strength opponents. Then your running game matters more, because if you have a small lead, you need to be able to keep the ball away from your opponent. You need to be able to, have extended drives in the third and fourth quarter. If you have, a one or even a 2-score lead, you still need to be able to play keep away. And if you don't have a strong running attack, then you can't do that. That gives your opponent the opportunity to come back into games. And I think, if that's probably the number one weakness right now for the Bucs, as far as, if going up against some of the elite teams in the NFL. In this spot, though, Adam was absolutely correct. The injuries for the Bucs, especially on offense, I think are hugely problematic. I think the Texans line on the opener was laughable. I don't think that they had completely kind of wrapped their head around, Godwin really is out. Perriman, Scott, all these guys are relatively dinged. And you read some of the quotes from the Bucs coaching staff, like, oh yeah, we're gonna, this tight ends, we're gonna, you're getting the ball today, and you think of Jameis Winston throwing passes over the middle of the field, even against a secondary that's not hugely opportunistic at creating turnovers. This spells trouble. And I would think that even at 49.5, I think the under is still in play in this one.
That's what I'm thinking. Is that obviously we want to oppose the Bucs here in some way. Is that a better way to oppose it? Because we're looking at the Texans the last couple of weeks. They have become pretty pragmatic. They are running the ball a lot. They're playing kind of a very kind of West Coast offense, a lot of dink and dunk. Obviously, you've got to try to Will Fuller down the field. But is that a better angle, guys, taking the under 49.5 than laying the tree on the road? Are we thinking that's right away?
I would think so. And, we've seen Bill O'Brien kind of strategically deploy his weapons this year. I think he's done a decent job of, when the game is not as high leverage, when it's not as important, when we can get a good lead on the likes of the Jaguars in London, we're going to squat on the ball, and we're going to completely take the air out of this thing, and we're not going to throw Will Fuller out there, who's enormously important part of our long-term success for the season. We need him healthy, come week 17 when we go up against the Titans again, and come wild card weekend, we need him out there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Texans can generate some sort of lead here, be it via stopping the Bucs just because the Bucs offense is a little out of sync, or turning the Bucs over. If the Texans can get a couple of score lead here, I think we're going to see just an outrageous amount of Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson in the running game, and we'll probably see this game shortened quite a bit.
All right, guys, that's that one covered. Let's move on to top underdog of the week. We've obviously saw a lot of shocks last week. Are there a few this week that potentially some big favorites that might need to be on upset alert? Drew Dinsick, you're laughing in the background. I think I know where you're going to go with your one. Do tell.
All chalk this week. Yeah, no underdog. No, I'm kidding. My top underdog, I think, is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles this week. I'm playing them on the money line. I think this is a good price for them, and I can see some of these longer odds teams having life. I'm fascinated to see what Will Grier does in Carolina. I think the Colts have pretty well given up on their season, and that's a pretty ridiculous. I'm surprised that hasn't been adjusted back towards Carolina with the injection of a completely new quarterback, because Kyle Allen had gotten so stale in that system, and that was, the team around him was not responding and playing for him. So putting in a new quarterback like Will Grier is going to be fascinating to see, and Carolina's likely live. I'll save my best bet as a dog, but it's not going to be on the money line.
All right, Adam Chernoff, any underdog catching your eye this week?
I don't disagree with Philly at all. I think that's a decent look. I would also probably look at the Tennessee Titans too on the money line against the Saints.
Okay. I gave up on this team a couple of weeks ago, Jacksonville Jaguars. I think you may have a situation in Jacksonville where the team has taken over, the players have taken over. They know Tom Coughlin's out the door. They know Doug Marone's out the door. There's been a lot of distress behind the scenes. They're 3.8 in Atlanta. I know Atlanta had the big win in San Francisco. That just seems a small bit too big for me. I think that line should be maybe pointed out. Yeah, it's just a different kind of angle. It could be a funny week this week. Could be potentially a funny week. Because a lot of those games have nothing on the line. And you see a kind of an underdog like that, and it's just one of those ones that, maybe just gets us up. Obviously, guys, you can have a bet on Matchbook. If you haven't got a Matchbook account, guys, you get a £10 bonus if your first bet loses. So if you want to take one of those ones, the Jags, what else have we got? The Titans, the Panthers, any one of them, if it loses, you get your money back. Terms and conditions apply. You can see it on screen now. And the place to find that offer is at offer.matchbook.com. Pretty simple one to remember. Right, guys, any other business? I'm thinking that's the section we're on to next. Drew, you're always a good man. We'll have a few more of these bets. Anything else elsewhere? Obviously, we have to get up to our best bets section yet, but anything else on the card that's catching your eye?
It's going to be a pretty light week for me, I think, overall. Nothing I'm burning to dive into.
Adam Chernoff, I think, in the same with you, sir.
Yeah, pretty light so far. I've got 3 bets in. I think I've talked myself into another one, going back and forth with you guys here on the show. So I'll probably be about 4 or 5 bets, but a pretty quiet weekend heading into Christmas.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap, guys, just before we get the best bets. So we're going to take the Vikings over 45.5, the Eagles money line. You love that one, Drew. Pats over 37.5 against the Bills. Texans under 49.5, which, of course, leads me on to week 16 best bets. Drew Dinsick, hit me with it.
So I still am really not ready to buy into the Seattle Seahawks as this world-beating unit. I know that they are home and they are going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who are playing for nothing, who just came away with a huge win over the Browns. But I think the market has been slow to react and slow to respond to adjusting to an appropriate number on the Cardinals. I think we saw it trending in the right direction as they got, as they became more and more confident and comfortable with the offensive system, and Kyler Murray has shown some growth, and then all of a sudden they get absolutely punked by the Rams, and we just sort of throw them, they drop back down, and it's just kind of sat stagnant. Their numbers kind of sat stagnant for the last handful of weeks, and even now it's really not being adjusted up to account for, I think, how lively they are, and they're going up against the Seattle team that I think has huge liabilities. This game isn't nearly as important for Seattle as Week 17. Seattle can lose this game and win Week 17, and they win the West. So this is not a great spot for Seattle at all. I think that their lack of ability to put teams away and really kind of play with killer instinct is cost them covers in at least 6 games this season. I would expect that this one's probably another that is in that same mold. Arizona is going to be fighting. They're going to be lively. This is their Super Bowl for all of your fun narrative discussions. I think that, having been beaten pretty badly the last couple of times they've gone up against divisional opponents, I think you get the best effort out of the Cardinals on the road. Seahawks haven't really earned the home field advantage that they've gotten this season at all. I'm not expecting that you're going to get, the most engaged crowd here for a matchup against the Cardinals as 10-point favorites. So give me Arizona plus 10.
Love that one. That was actually going to be my one, but I'm going to give you a different one in a second. I really love that one. That was just one that just stuck out to me. Adam Chernoff, your best bet of the week, sir.
It's moving, but if you can get the Chargers better than 7, go ahead and take that off of the most misleading 29-point loss in NFL history. But you get better than 7, and you're good to go there.
Adam, but this is the last ever game for the Raiders, home away from home at the Dignity Health Sports Park.
What a narrative! What a narrative!
Oh.
Yeah. There was so much money came from the Raiders, generally kind of on the back of that. Not looking back at the previous 3 or 4 weeks, how they've stunk the joint out. But yeah, whatever. It's not that nice a place, guys. There's a reason they're leaving Oakland and the baseball field, by the way. But anyway, 1.84. You can back the Chargers currently at matchbook -6.5. It's a pretty key number. Yeah, won't be there for long. Absolutely. It's -7 at 1.99. Right, my best one. Chiefs minus, I think it's 5.5 at the moment. I'm kind of generally loath to laying points on the road. This defense has picked it up in a massive way in the last 4 games. I think they're only giving up about 11.25 yards a game. I don't think the Bears are as good as people even think they are. They were never really good to begin with, let's be honest. -5.5 Chiefs to me. I think the defense gets done. Mahomes gets enough plays done. I think they win this. I think they win this by 10-14. I think we're out of time, guys. I think we are officially out of time. Merry Christmas to you and yours, guys, and to all of you watching today and all of you listening. Thanks so much for all you do for us all year. We'll have one more 2019 episode, week 17. That'll be on the 26th of December. It's Boxing Day in the UK. It's St. Stephen's Day in Ireland. What's 26th December called in the US and Canada, guys? Any special name for it? No?
It's usually a pretty busy travel day. People Christmas doesn't have a special designation for us.
Yeah, okay. No, that sounds good. We'll be back. That will be at 6:30 UK time. That's 1:30 East Coast. And what time is that in? That's 9:30 Pacific, isn't it?
That sounds right.
Sounds good. Okay, guys. Best of luck with your Week 16 bets. I think we've got some good ones there. I think we've got 7. What have we got? 7 pretty solid bets.
I like it.
And enjoy the best of luck with your bets. And we'll chat to you next week. Merry Christmas.
Merry.